If you've watched the movie Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, Kajol is trying to inculcate that love, you should love India to her child. Cringy, all those scenes. She would go to her child and say, "Sare jahan se acha Hindustan hamara." She's not doing the best job of making her child actually appreciate that in any way. You didn't do that with me. Landing in Bangalore, you would say, "Look out of the window. What's the color of the soil?" Mates, you're making India fun to me. Welcome to the second episode of the Eternal Dialogues podcast. I'm here with my mother, my amma, and this is a continuation of the first episode that we made on what is good parenting, in which we had a lot of interesting discussions about obviously what is good parenting, what does the vision of good parenting look like, what are some important traits to pass on to children, innovative ways in which you can do that, should everyone become parents? So we had some interesting discussions, but there were a few things that we didn't touch on, and I thought it would make for a good second podcast. And that was the idea of civilizational connectedness and rootedness, and how that can be brought in children who are taken overseas at a young age from India. So we know that a lot of first generation Indians who move out of India and they settle down abroad, they have that connection to India because they grew up in India. They went to school in India. They have friends in India. They have family in India. And so when they go out, they like to go back very often. But then they have kids outside of America, or they have kids in India and then they take away their kids at a very young age, which is my case, right? And then the challenge now comes in trying to ensure that the kids feel the same rootedness and connectedness that they feel for India. And that becomes a huge challenge, because what we see is that kids grow up abroad and they feel like foreigners in India. When they go and visit India, they don't feel like this is home as much as their parents feel that way. And that makes sense, right? They grew up abroad. For India is just a travel destination for them to meet their grandparents or go to that occasional Indian wedding, dress up, look exotic for a day, take some aesthetic Instagram photos. So that's really what India is to a lot of kids who grow up abroad. And there shouldn't really be a problem with that, right? Like they're outside India, but you didn't feel that way. When you raised me, it was very, very important to you that I feel the same level of connectedness to India that you feel. And why is that the case? I guess that's the first question.
So thank you for doing this podcast. It's lovely to talk to you. We have talked about this so many times, but yes, to do it in a structured way is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So why is it important to be connected to India if you're an Indian of Indian origin? Why is it important to me? That's what you're asking.
Why is it important to you?
Not for everyone. I think it is about being authentic. It is about being authentic. I feel that if you're Indian, Indian origin, whatever, if you're born in India, then you moved out, whatever, if you have Indian blood in you, then in order to be authentic, to be your true self, you need to be connected to India. Otherwise, that authenticity will not come. You'll be fake. When I look at a lot of people who are not connected to India, the Indian kids, I feel that they are not being their true self. There's something about them that they don't know. So it's, and I also get the feeling that they, that famous saying of Michael Crichton, he said that if you don't know history, you are like a leaf that doesn't know it is part of a tree. Mm-hmm. So I get that feeling when I look at children who are not connected to, Indian children who are not connected to India or don't feel that love for India. I feel like they are leaves who don't know they are part of this big tree, this big banyan tree, if you like it, that tree of knowledge, the tree of life. So when you're not authentic, there is my friend Raghav Krishna, I love to quote him all the time. He said that being authentic is aligning your swabhava to your swadharma, right? Swabhava, your innermost nature, your true nature. When that gets aligned with your swadharma, your dharma, which is your duty. Dharma has, of course, a lot of meanings. So when both of them get aligned, then your authentic self comes out, right? So authenticity gives you a lot of confidence. It makes you confident, it makes you comfortable in your skin, and you play to your strengths, right? So you're relaxed. When you're authentic, you're relaxed. You might have noticed that, if you're very comfortable in your skin, you acknowledge your past, you know where your parents come from, and you have the sense of belonging, then you're very relaxed. You're not tense trying to be something else, right? And I feel that impacts your relationships. So all these things, of course, I didn't think of this consciously when I said that I want you to be connected to India. I just wanted you to know where you're from. But over the years, I realized I probed within myself and asked this question, so I know that meaningful relationships come from being authentic. So relationships with people, your friends, so that fakery will go out, and you'll talk in a natural way. You'll not be hiding anything about your parents, your country, the why you are a certain way, right? Otherwise, you'll try to be something else. You want to not, like we see that in the African experience also in America, right? When you were the one who told me about it, that yam, for example, they are eating yam, that yam was a part of their diet, and they had to always explain why they ate so much of yam, and in order to not in order to be like the others, they stopped eating yam and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So you're not relaxed, you're not your own self when you're being fake, when you're not authentic. So it's very important to be connected to your history, to your roots. And then in the context of meaningful relationships, I would also say in your office work, in your office space, with your colleagues also, if you want a genuine relationship, then it's good to be authentic.
That's interesting, but would you not also agree that if these children move out of India and they adopt and assimilate into the culture that they're moved into, it'll be easier for them to be genuine and authentic and create a community easier than if they were so different?
Well, maybe there are certain trade-offs, but when they are trying to assimilate, they are actually changing themselves forcibly to be something else. That's not their true nature. So that inner journey which should happen, where they know what they are, that is not happening. So I feel that on the face of it, it's easier to pretend to be something, to have that fake accent. Maybe you're accepted by everybody and all that stuff. But somewhere I think you will not be happy. In fact, that's the next thing. I would also say that being rooted is also your path to happiness, your true happiness. Because you might have friends by being fake, by pretending to be like them and not showing your...
But it might not be fakeness. Is the people who grow up here in America or wherever, it may not be fakeness. They just have imbibed the mannerisms, the characteristics of their peers. So in a way,
I don't see it that way. Maybe you would say that's not fakeness, but I would feel like if they don't know what they are, then they're not being true to themselves. That's the way I would see it. So they might look like they're assimilated, but I feel like there's some gap in their understanding of themselves, and that makes me feel like they are not authentic.
Okay.
So I think maybe it's a subjective...
It is very subjective. I still feel, no, I understand where you're coming from, but I also understand parents who don't feel like they need to put too much effort into making their child love India. I think it's subjective. It differs from one parent to another. That's just my opinion.
Well, okay. The other thing is, because I love India so much. I love India so much, and the child that you are my child, and you grow up to not know anything about India, then there's going to be a disconnect between me and you.
I agree with that, yeah.
So and I'm seeing that disconnect, parents complaining that, oh, my child doesn't feel the same way as I do. And I'm thinking, why did you not try to make the child understand you better? If you love India, why did you not make your child also love India to some extent at least? But you did nothing. You just you took the easy path of letting the child do whatever she wanted. And now you feel the disconnect. As you age, right? When we all age, we tend to go back to our roots anyway. So then that disconnect will happen with the child. And that's not good. That's not healthy.
I think there's a disconnect either way. So if this child is not or has assimilated completely, they'll be very comfortable in their surroundings. maybe offices, schools, whatever, all the external surroundings. But at home, they won't be that comfortable with their parents, and they'll grow to have this huge generation gap,
No,
and not
that's
be able to connect with their family and their parents.
No,
So
that's
that will
because
happen to those kids. And then the kids who are very connected, they will have a great relationship with their family. They'll be happy, but they may find it difficult to assimilate.
no, I can understand it's
Okay.
challenging, but I think you can have that balance. See, now the friction is because parents probably don't understand their children well enough. So the parents are very demanding about how their child should be, and they're not really working with the child to see that there is that balance. So that your parent understands that yes, when you go to school, then they want you to, in order for you to have lots of friends, you have to behave in a certain way, dress in a certain way. But the parents should be guiding the child to be true to themselves. So true to where we came from, in a way that it doesn't lead to a lot of friction. I mean, the rigidity should not be there. There have to be conversations.
Right.
I mean, like you and I, we had lots of conversations, and that helped you to know who you are. I
But a
don't know
lot
if
of
that
kids
led to.
also develop like a dual personality, where they have different natures. They just come out at different times. With their family, they are one type of person, and then with their friends and the external environment, they're a different type. So
Yeah,
that is something that also develops.
okay. So I don't know. See, I would, because I have been talking to you a lot. I have tried to tell you not to have that dual personality. Be yourself both times. Both. I mean, you can also be in um, different milieus, and you behave a little bit differently. You are not going to be same anyway. Even if I'm an authentic Indian, it also doesn't mean that I'll always be, wearing only Indian clothes all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But you will speak from that place where you came from, that innermost self. You will bring that out, and it's all about communication. That if you're able to communicate well, I don't think that there should be that discord or that dichotomy. I don't think so. If that is happening, that means there is some kind of lack of communication.
Or there
Yes.
might be some kind of embarrassment that they feel.
Exactly. So
And that's what's leading to that dichotomy. They're not
exactly.
confident and proud.
Maybe not informed enough as well. So, for example, to say that I'm vegetarian, now a child might feel embarrassed to say that I don't eat all that you are eating. I don't eat beef. I don't eat meat or something. And so they might mock you for being Hindu or coming from India, right? So that time, if you don't know how to answer back, if you're not strong enough, then there might be issues. So I often feel that all that dichotomy also comes because that child is not strong enough or has not been made to feel secure. So I don't know, maybe I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I think there are trade-offs in both types of upbringing. So the parents who ensure that their child is assimilated in these new environments that they've taken their child to, they end up losing out, and they may not be able to connect with that child, even though they have ensured that their child is equipped to completely assimilate into this new environment and be happy and secure because they're just like other kids, and they don't feel any different. So parents were focusing on that, and a lot of parents do focus on that. They want their child to be as comfortable in this new environment, and they're risking that relationship that they have with their child. So that's a form of sacrifice in a way, because they want their child to have a good life in the future. Even if the child doesn't have a relationship with them, at least they know that this child is not going to spend time with their parents forever. They have to exist in this world on their own, and by ensuring that their child is as assimilated, that's the best path for them forward. But then there are parents like you who feel that you want that child to have a connection to their family as well. And because of that, you care about that connectedness, because we wouldn't be able to talk or have conversations or do things together or enjoy spending time together if you like going back to India and I'm like, I don't want to go to India. I don't like going there. If I start behaving like that, there'll be a disconnect between the two of us.
Yeah.
And that also leads to discord. I mean, I'm not saying that someone who is assimilated into their external surroundings and doesn't have a good relationship with their family, that they're happy, that they're not going to be happy either. So I think there's a trade-off in both types of upbringing. But I also feel like there's a middle ground. in
That's
that
what-
the
that's
middle
what I said.
ground is that comes from confidence, where you are connected, but you're confident enough to explain why you're connected to the outside world, and you're not embarrassed or apologetic about it, and you don't think that's going to take away from your opportunities, or you don't, because one thing is people don't want to be seen as religious, or people don't want to be seen as rigid, and so they try to hide that aspects of themselves that show that they are, they that might hint to those things. And that's one of the reasons they like to have two separate lives, where they are one thing at home and a completely different
No,
personality.
but that's because the definition of religion itself is that way, right? So for a Hindu to say that I'm religious only means that I am connected to nature, I'm connected to my
But
inner
not,
self.
the world doesn't see it that
So
way.
that's what that explanation, that communication has not happened. So religion is seen as some kind of a dogma,
Yeah.
as some kind of rigidity, you know. So that's because that's how it has been understood by the Western world.
Exactly. And so the Hindus who grow up here have to also try to separate themselves from that too religious. Like, I know a friend was, describing one of her friends to me, and then she said something like, she's too Christian, you get it. And I wonder if someone is describing a Hindu as, oh, she's too Hindu. And that kind of creates um, some kind of stereotype about that person, that maybe this person doesn't want that stereotype to be developed of being too Hindu, and so they separate themselves from that identity. But you're right, it's how the West perceives religion and Hinduness that they don't want associated with them.
Well, aren't they proud Christians? I'm sure there are. I mean, so many people go to church every Sunday and they go to school as well. And I don't think they try to hide that they are Christian.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel that it's individual.
It
Yes,
is
so-
individual, but I think we've understood that it comes from confidence and being confident in your identity, so that you're not, that helps you in resolving that dichotomy between the family life and your social life.
But also, there are parents who are not Indian enough. They have first of all left India and come to the US thinking
That's
it's a better
also true.
place. So they don't want any connection with India. So they will raise their children to be like them. That's one thing. But for me, it was not that. It wasn't the push factor that led me to come here. That I'm pushed out of India. I didn't like India. It was never that, right? So that love for India was always there, and of course, I had to follow your father because he wanted to work in America. He wanted that experience, that multinational experience, working in different countries, what it feels like. I went reluctantly with him, but it was very enriching. And at the same time, I wanted to go back to India again and again, because that's where I got all the inspiration from, right? Initially, it was, of course, being with parents, being with family and friends, but it's also that inspiration that I get from India when I go back. That the whole Indian knowledge systems, there's so much knowledge there in India that keeps pulling me there, and when I come back from India, I come so enriched, full of energy, more empowered.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way when I go to India. So you've definitely done a good job, I guess, of raising me to feel that way. But I do want to shift gears and talk a little bit more about what are the things that you did to make me love India, because I think we can go on forever on whether parents who move abroad should make their children love India or not. But we also know that there are a lot of parents who regret the fact that they have not inculcated that in their children. And just speaking to those parents, let's talk a little bit more about what you did to make me love India.
Yeah, so I think it was quite a conscious decision. So one of the things I remember was that when people from India would visit us, I would tell you about their surnames, their last names, right?
Yeah.
So if you remember, I used to tell you that Chatterjee, Banerjee, Mukherjee, these are all Bengalis, and people with names like Sundar Rajan, Krishnamurti, these are all Tamilians. Then I would tell you about Ambedkar, right? Tendulkar, and all those kind of names which are Maharashtrian, typical Maharashtrian. So I used to tell you a lot of these things and make you also guess if a guest is coming, and this is the name of the guest who's coming from India, and I would make you guess which part of India that he's from. So by gaming it also, I think I made you interested in the people who came, listening to them. You would be involved in the conversations, but also telling you things like that, the surnames. The other thing was, maybe my peculiarity, I really wanted you to know the Indian monsoon, all about the monsoon, because geography was a very favorite subject of mine in school. And I used to be very inspired. It was my teacher, Miss Madhavi Mukherjee. She taught us geography in Julian Day School. And the way she taught Southwest Monsoon, it was very inspiring. You know, the winds come laden with moisture and they, from the southwest, and they dash against the Western Ghats, dropping all the rain there. Then they go all around the peninsula of India. Then they go to Bengal, and then the rain drops all along there, right? So and then this monsoon is such an intrinsic part of India. There's so much of music around it, the paintings, and then that monsoon affects how India's vegetation is, different kinds of crops grown in different parts of India because of the way the monsoon works in India. And so all these things were very interesting for me in school. So even though we came out of India, I made sure to teach you all those things, right? So that, I don't know, did you like all that when I was teaching you all that? And
I mean, it never felt like something that was forced on me to love India. I remember, I hate to give this example, but if you've watched the movie Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, I know we as a family hate that movie. But the way Kajol is trying to inculcate that you should love India to her child. Do you remember how cringy all those scenes are? It never felt like that. Like she would go to her child and say, "Sare jahan se अच्छा हिंदुस्तान हमारा."
बोलना हाँ सब कुछ सीख गया कुछ नहीं सीखा है इसे कुछ पता नहीं अपने देश के बारे में अरे हमारा धर्म हमारे संस्कृति हमारे संस्कार अरे हटो ना अरे हमारे देश के बारे में तो Stop it, mummy. What देश ए सारे जहां से अच्छा हिंदुस्तान हमारा कभी मत भूलना हाँ
Mom, take a chill pill.
Like, you know, it's almost like, why do you not love India the way I do? And she's frustrated with it, but she's not doing the best job of making her child actually appreciate that in any way. Terrible example, but I just had to get that out of the way because you didn't do that with me, right? The games are really, really helpful. Of course, the surnames and all, it didn't feel like you're trying to make me love India by that, but all of those things contributed to it, because now when I hear a last name, I'm trying to figure out, okay, where are they from? And I also remember when we would go on trips to India, we would usually go to Delhi and then Bengaluru. And when we're landing in Bengaluru, you would say, look out of the window, what's the color of the soil? And I would look out, I would see, oh, it's red, it's dark brown, it's red. And then that's how you would explain the terrain to me. This is the Deccan terrain. Yes. How did that come about? Why does Delhi not have the same kind of terrain and soil? And so now I know all these things, yes, which is interesting to me. You're making India fun to me without actually enforcing that.
Right. And if you remember, in Singapore, there were lots of Chinese people from the, the Chinese race. And I told you that in India also you will find a lot of people who have those same features. So not all Indians look like us. So I would make it a point when we went to Delhi, when we went to Bangalore, whenever we came across somebody from Northeast India, right? You would know then, okay, so we have so many different races in India. The diversity of India was something I wanted to make you understand a lot. The languages that are spoken all over India, then all of them rooted in Sanskrit, that I would try to tell you about Sanskrit. Of course, at that time, I didn't know Sanskrit. I started learning later on. But I gave you those basics because I wanted you to appreciate that vast diversity and the unity in that diversity, right? And then, the kind of wisdom that lives in India. It's there in the air itself, as people say. You feel that there's so much knowledge, right? Even people who are not very educated, English educated, like you're just talking to them, somebody who's not gone beyond primary school, but you still see so much of wisdom in them in India. And I used to try to tell you about that. I know it was a lot of, and then stories. I think I used a lot of, Amar Chitra Katha was there, you would read that. Purana stories, Ramayana, Mahabharata, of course, so many times you even watched, I think, Ram Leela as well, you did, so a lot of connection with Ramayana and Mahabharata, though I wish it was more, but you knew about it. So those things, those stories, Puranic stories also made you understand the culture and the literature, right?
Yeah, stories are definitely a great way. You had many stories, you were a good storyteller. So all of those things definitely made me feel interested in learning more about India. And yeah, I mean, every part of India, you've taken me to Bengal, Rajasthan, um, where else? I have to remember. Hyderabad, Tamil Nadu, Kerala. We've been to so many places in India, and they're different, but there's something that's uniting all of them together, but they're still different.
The most important thing is because we were in Singapore and those two Indian international schools opened, right?
Yeah.
So there was Global Indian International School first, and then came DPS. And so we put you on DPS. That was a huge advantage for me. It made me so happy that now you're going to study Indian geography, Indian history. Of course, it was the leftist Marxist history, but I was able to give you the correction that what the narrative of history which has been given by the colonizers. This is the colonizers' version that we gave railways to India. But I would be telling you that those railways were meant for the British to cart off India's wealth and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think being in Singapore, which was 4 hours away from India, that was very helpful to ensure that you had that connectivity with India.
Yeah, in a way, my experience is different from maybe other immigrants who move out of India and move to the US, because we moved to Singapore before we moved to the US. In my middle school time, we moved to the US. Yeah. So because of that, I had
6 months old, and then you were there till you were 13, 14 years old. So
but I think growing up in Singapore, which until I was 12, 13, definitely played an important role in my love for India, because Tamil is one of the national languages of Singapore. We get holidays for Diwali, which is not something you get in this country until recently in New York. But Diwali was a holiday every year, and so I had that time, and people we had Little India, for instance, right?
And then of course you knew that you had to go to Little India when you would actually see the place decked up for Deepavali.
Yeah, but we at least had a Little India.
Yeah, we had a Little India.
And of course these Indian international schools where I'm seeing teachers come to my classroom in saris. We would celebrate all the different festivals in our assembly. So I remember Janmashtami very clearly, because they had us in our assembly time. There was a performance where we broke the pot. Someone climbed on top of each other. We broke one boy broke the pot. Butter came out of it. So I saw all of those things being enacted in front of me in my school, along with other students who are my friends. And so it was part of my community. And because we lived in a condo in Singapore, there was also functions right downstairs where
we had a big Indian community there, which was living in that apartment complex. So we could all get together downstairs and do things, right? But that is difficult in America. But in America now there is a big community, but they're all scattered, and they all have to plan it in a way that they get together. Singapore was easier because it has an Indic civilization. Singapore's culture itself is that mixture of Tamil, Malay, Chinese. So it's very Indic. Right? Even the Chinese customs, you would see that, the lighting of the incense, it's very similar to Indian. So you had that basic grounding, and the roots were there for you.
Yeah.
Right?
And there's subconscious things that I gained from my education in DPS. Things like I just know how to identify states on India's map, which maybe someone growing up here has not learned that in school. So either their parents have to ensure that they know it, or they must have gone to like a workshop or some weekend camp and learned it there. But this is something that came to me from my education system itself.
Well, the camps in America are quite good. I'm hearing that the camps, you didn't go to any of them, but the week-long camps are quite fun, and they learn a lot of things. They learn Sanskrit shlokas, and they do a lot of that. So that part is good. But I think being close to India really does matter. If not, I think parents should take their children on trips to India and make them do meaningful things there. Not just hang out with relatives, which is good, but do meaningful things. And also try to explain to them. But again, it's just explaining will not work. You have to make it fun. You have to tell stories. Experiential. It has to be experiential. If you don't experience it, then you don't know what it is, right? You were telling me something about the classroom experience.
Yeah. So I think what you did is you made me love India. That was something that was very evident in the way that you raised me. I always felt connected to India, and my love for Hinduism like flowed out of the love from India. It was not explicit in the fact that I know that people, maybe some Indians growing up here, the parents are very, very adamant about them knowing all the Bhagwans, the deities. And I mean, the focus is more on you should be a good Hindu. You should know the tenets of Hinduism. I think the parents are very clear about that in America, the ones who want their child to be connected. But you didn't actually do that to me. You just made me love India. And through the love of India came the love for Hinduism. Because when you go to India, each temple you visit, you have to know about the deity there. And so you're seeing the deity, how the deity is being worshipped. There's a lingam for Shiva. And then there's a different types of, what do you call the, going around the Pradakshina is different for Shiva temples. So I'm just seeing all of that in India. And because of that, I'm getting exposed to Hinduism.
That's right.
So it's not something that's
classical music. Do you remember?
Yes.
You learned Hindustani classical, and that made you understand a lot of things. So many ragas. So you didn't go too deep into it, but I felt like that also was a way for you to love India and love. You used to learn bhajans also, classical.
Yeah,
bhajans.
that was definitely helpful because the bhajans that you would learn would tell you a lot about the characteristics of the deity. Like if you're singing a Ganesha bhajan, you know what kind of sweet is given to him, and then you also know what his vahana is. So things like that are brought out in the songs itself. And then you know that during Holi people are celebrating Krishna and Radha, because I remember there were some bhajans that I remember those words really clearly. And I think music stories are one thing because they stay, but music is very sticky. I still remember the cadence of so many the things. I may have forgotten the meaning, but I remember the words, and so now I can look it up because it comes to my head every now and then from what I've learned.
Do you remember that Shubha Mudgal workshop that you went to? Yeah, classical.
So yeah, you put me in a Shubha Mudgal. She came to Singapore and did like a workshop for a week. I think I was going every day. Yeah. And she taught us this. I wouldn't say bhajan, a patriotic song, I would say, about Jhansi ki Rani.
Yes.
So Singhasan hil uthe, Rajvansho ne Brukuti Tani thi, Booढ़े भारत में भी आई, फिर से नई जवानी थी, गुमी हुई आज़ादी की कीमत सबने पहचानी थी, दूर फिरंगी को करने की सबके मन में ठानी थी. I can go on. I mean, it's just in my memory. It's चमक उठी 57 में वो तलवार पुरानी थी, and then बुंदेले हर बोलो के
मुंह हमने सुनी कहानी थी. Such an amazing song.
Yeah.
I wish she would. It's not available on YouTube now. Or the way she sang it and the way she taught it to all of you.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it stuck with me. I haven't remembered this in so many years, but that cadence is there, and now that's another. I mean, it's just part of my subconscious, right? It was part of my learning.
So then think about how it should. Suppose you're not very close to India. You're now 20 hours away from India. Then how would that connectivity happen? In a way, I'm glad that you were raised first in Singapore and then brought here. Yeah. When I wrote that article on how I raised you, which was published in Medium, a lot of people did write there. They said that, well, in America, it's much harder to keep going to India so many times, because I used to take you to India 2 or 3 times in a year. When you were younger, I used to do that.
But also, just taking me to India doesn't make me Hindu. I mean, there's so many parents who take their kids to India and say, "Oh, I've taken my kids to India so many times. How did I lose them? How did they start looking down on India and
feeling embarrassed about being Indian?"
Exactly, right? Feeling embarrassed or are anti-India as such. So it's not just going to India. It's what you do when you go to India that really matters.
Right. Yeah, you shouldn't be just going there as a tourist. You should be going there with a keen sense of observation and experiencing it, and it has to be guided by the parent. I think that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
You used to pick parijata flowers. You would go down with your nani, go down and pick the flowers for the puja.
Yes.
A lot of things that you did. I'm sure those things would have also brought that connection for you, right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I just remember having, picking the parijata flowers. It's experiential learning. We're coming back to that again and again. And even though I felt really sick once in India because of I got dengue fever because
Yes.
a mosquito bit me and I was in the hospital for
No, that's the
days.
time I thought you would hate India forever, right?
Yeah.
You remember that experience when you were in the hospital for 7 days and you were so miserable. I mean, you were bitten by mosquitoes in every city we went to. Uh, that's what caused it. It was that season where people fall sick with malaria and dengue.
Yeah, there were definitely a lot of inconveniences that I experienced in India. There was like power cuts every now and then, but I think that was the fun of it. The fact that there were like I'd never seen all of it was so much fun. I don't know how to explain it really.
Yeah. No, that's because they're going there from the time you were young. I remember you had some friends who hated to go back to India because they didn't like the traffic. They didn't like those things. They wanted all that. They were pampered and they wanted all those comforts, which they would lose when they went to India, where they would have to share the bathroom, all those things. They didn't like doing that.
Yeah, I never saw the inconveniences as a way to hate India or say I don't want to go to India. It never that thought never crossed my mind. Even the dengue experience,
Oh, come on. At that time, you were.
okay, I was sad that I had got dengue and that it made me sick for so many days, but at no point did I even think that I should point fingers at India because of my experiences. I mean, that's I know what India stands for, so how can I, it's like my motherland, how can I,
Yeah, that is what that.
I mean, it's just not a given for me to say, oh, why India's terrible, that's why this happened to me. That's not how in fact, I looked at it as in a way that I don't think you expected.
Yeah.
But I thought that if I had gone back to India more often, I wouldn't have fallen sick.
Yeah, I was amazed with that thought of yours because I really thought that you would not really want to go back to India again after being so sick. Because I remember another instance where I met a mother and a child. The child was very sick, and the mother had brought the child to emergency, and that mother was telling me that देखो हम तो अमेरिका में रहते हैं और यहाँ आए हम लोग हॉलीडे को और देखो क्या हो गया इस बच्चे को बीमार पड़ गया है ये पता नहीं क्यों लेके आई मैं इसको and she was literally feeling miserable that she brought the child to India. And I feel like she herself will not bring the child again to India because she.
Just bring your child to India more often is what I would say.
Yeah, you
and
gave
then
me the opposite reasoning. You said that because I have not come to India so often.
No, I mean I was going every year to India, and then we moved to the US, and for 4 years I didn't go to India because my high school, we have summer school over the summer. There was just no time to go.
And 4 years. You went after a gap of 4 years.
And I've never gone after a gap of 4 years. In Singapore, we were going every couple of months. And so that gap of 4 years happened for the first time. And so that's what I blamed for my dengue fever. Right. Of course, I don't know if it's scientifically true, but that's the sentiment that I carried at that time.
Right.
And then actually a year later, I was really excited to be part of the SEWA trip, SEWA International.
I was astonished when you applied for that because I thought you would want to do some internship in America. That's what everybody does. You actually signed up for that and then told me that you're going to India.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering whether you can really do it. And I think they also prepared you for it, right? That Wi-Fi may not be good there and all that, right?
Yeah, because they knew it was a bunch of American raised children who were coming to India, so they prepared us for everything. But I mean, I had gone to India so many times at that point that I didn't feel like I didn't need all those explanations. Like I felt like you don't have to explain your own country to me, right?
No, that's because you were you. The others who were raised differently, I think they needed that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that vlog that you made on the SEWA trip, that was amazing. It beautifully encapsulates what all you experienced in that trip.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go back and watch it.
Yeah, that was the first time. It was 2017. That summer, I truly felt independent. I could go around in the auto rickshaws on my own. I could converse with everyone in my broken.
Well, you were speaking in Kannada.
My broken Kannada, of course.
Yeah,
I definitely need to improve on my Kannada, but that's a different story.
So you were not feeling nervous when you went alone in autos?
No, I mean just maybe the first few days, but I just felt like everyone's like my family. I mean, I just felt so connected to everyone. So it was very easy. These people are like my people.
And you went to Rangadore Hospital for your internship?
Yeah, I went to different hospitals, and I found that everyone was very hospitable. The nurses, they would travel. I think they had 2 hour long commutes to come to the hospital to work for so many hours. But during lunchtime, they would ask me what my favorite food is, and I said my favorite food is hurli anna, which is sambar rice. And they said, oh, such a simple thing. I mean, shouldn't your favorite food be something more fancy than that? Because they said we can make it for you too. And the next day they made food for me, and they didn't have to do all of that, but they went out of the way to make me feel comfortable.
Yes.
So I appreciated that, and I felt very at home with the nurses.
Yeah, you
in the
told me that
hospital.
people are so kind here. People are so nice. And somehow that was a comment that reminded me of what so many foreign travelers have said about India. You know, you hear that again and again. They're saying the people of India are so good, intrinsically good. A lot of foreign travelers have said that, French people. And, there was the first English traveler who came to India, Ralph Fitch. He has written about hospitals for animals in India, and he was very astonished that, back in Europe, when an animal is old, then that animal is left to die. Nobody takes care of the animal. Of course, they also eat a lot of meat there. So he was very surprised that injured animals and old animals are being taken care of in hospitals in India. Ralph Fitch. Then there was Pietro della Vella from Italy. He said the same thing. In Cambay, he was surprised to see bird hospitals, different kinds of animals being taken care of in hospitals. So I think the kindness that you saw is that same thing. It's intrinsic to the nature. But today it has changed a lot, and of course then we got colonized and we were invaded, colonized. So some of that nature might have eroded. But even today, you saw that. You saw that. I felt like you got the heart of India when you told me that people were so kind, and I was so moved that I actually cried when I came to know that you felt that way about India.
Yeah. I definitely feel connected to India, but I don't know if people in India would accept me as one of them. That's another thing that I think of, because they would still look at me as someone who's an NRI, someone who's grown outside of India and doesn't feel or have the same experience that they have growing up in India.
I don't think, because there are so many who have gone back, right? So many of them have actually moved back.
No, I think that there is a certain experience. I cannot have the 100% experience that someone living in India, the connectedness they feel. I cannot have 100% of that, because living in India is obviously going to complete that experience for you. But as parents, you can try to get me as close to that as possible, but that there's always going to be something definitely missing. For instance, there was a friend of mine, her mother, very similar to you in terms of wanting to raise a child who's rooted. She said that in India, friends, it's Hinduism and is in the air for them, right? So that's something that you would never have access to here, where it's not in the air. So she mentioned something like, maybe it's in her time, but friends would just say, "Chalo mandir jaakar aate hain." Like, that's their style of talking. It's like Hinduism is mixed into their conversations, into their daily life, into their culture, and they don't have to go about explaining who they are. Whereas in America, you may know who you are, you may be rooted, but you are still in a culture where you still have to keep explaining who you are, and in some way that takes away from you, from your complete experience of feeling fully Indian, because you're still living in a place where you have to explain yourself.
Yeah, that difference will be there. Yeah. But as long as you're proud of your heritage, you know your history, you are very grateful to all the knowledge that has come down the ages, right? So that's also part of being Hindu, being Indian, being grateful to the gurus who have passed down all this knowledge, knowing about the Veda, the timeless knowledge which teaches you about who you are, to look within you, those things. So that part, I think, is what is going to define you as an Indian. Other things are, it can happen to anybody, wherever you go. Even within America, you move to another city, there will be, like you've come from Texas to this place, and they think, they come with those, they stereotype you thinking that you are from Texas. That happens, right? So I think that part would happen anywhere.
Yeah, that's definitely bound to happen. But another thing I wanted to ask about, which might be connected to what we've spoken about before, but there are parents who want to raise their kids as Hindus, but they don't feel that need to connect them to India because they can still be Hindu and think of America as their country, right? As the place they're growing up. Why does India need to be that important in their...
See, India, if you are a Hindu and then you don't care about India, it makes no sense to me. Because the most sacred Tirtha Sthanas, they are all in India. You know, you have the Himalayas, which is the abode of Shiva and Parvati. You have all those temples. Then the rest of India also, you have so many important temples. The Shakti Pithas are there. Okay, then, you know, the Vishnu temples in southern India, so many of them. So these are all very sacred sthalas where sadhakas, you know, people who do meditation, tapasya, for thousands of years it has been done. So there's a lot of energy in these places. So if you want that energy, then you have to be connected to India. So here in America or Europe, you can build temples, you can do the puja, but you know, it doesn't have the thousands and thousands of years of puja and sadhana over there. So that energy level can't be the same as India, where the Agama Shastras have been followed in building all those temples. So the way when so many thousands of people are meditating together, there's a certain energy to that place. Himalaya is exactly that. So that's why I feel that you can be as Hindu as you want anywhere in the world, but you can't say that you will not have anything to do with India, because that is the source, that is the mother civilization.
Same thing can be said for other religions as well, right? Like no matter where you are, your Christianity is connected to Jerusalem or the Vatican. I'm not too sure of that. And then for Islam, they're connected to Saudi Arabia. They can be a Muslim anywhere in the world. So I think it's a similar argument that can be made for why Hindus all over the world should feel connected to India if they claim to be Hindus.
No, so that wider knowledge, the deeper knowledge will not come if they don't go back to India again and again. Because you see things like Kumbh Mela, you know, the huge Kumbh Mela which happens in India, right, every 12 years, where thousands and thousands of saints, Sant Mahatmas will come, and they will come from their abodes in Himalaya and various places. They'll give discourses, there'll be exchanges. That experience of Kumbh Mela, you cannot make that in India, make that in America or anywhere else. So you have to keep
that
going back.
Experiential learning that allows you to connect to Hinduism is what you can get in India, and that's what makes your identity. Because otherwise, if you don't have India in the picture and you're a Hindu, you're growing up in America, your Hinduism is just a classroom experience to you at that point. You'll be taught. If you're in America and you're not connected to India, you have not experienced any of these things. You've not gone to India at all. But your parents have told you you're a Hindu. And you, as growing up here, your only understanding of Hinduism is a classroom setting, basically. That this is this God, this is this God, this is how you worship this God. It's just all being lectured in a way to you. But the true experience is what you get in India.
That experience of seeing different sampradayas all in India, right? They're all side by side, all these different sampradayas worshipping different deities, and then the wisdom that comes from all that, you will not get that outside India unless you go there, right? And so, as you said, it's in the air. That what is in the air, you will not be able to get that in America.
Exactly.
So that diversity of philosophies and that sense of unity that you have, and that wisdom, that knowledge that has come down the generations, you'll keep seeing that timelessness of that knowledge in so many things that happen in India. As you are walking along, you will see how the driver, how is he starting the journey, what does he do before starting, how he remembers, or you know, the Ganesha that is hanging from that car, the rear view mirror. Then you know, so many things, so many symbols and so many things that you see when you go to India that will reinforce who you are as a Hindu and as an Indian. So that will not happen if you don't travel to India at all.
Because you're seeing Hinduism practiced
yes,
everywhere in a way. And yeah, exactly. All of those things will reinforce because
So
now
whenever you pass a temple as you're driving, then you will fold your hands, you will do namaskara, and then keep driving. Then, so there'll be so many temples, but you'll find the auto rickshaw drivers do it, taxi drivers do it. They all do it.
it makes you more proud and about your
It makes you
civilization.
more connected. You reaffirm yourself.
Yeah.
You get that inspiration, and then of course you engage in conversations with them, and you see the way they talk itself. You will see that shraddha, right? It's like Sabrimala, how some of the men, they all gear up for going there. So they go off so many.
Like I remember seeing a group of people clothed in black robes, and I asked you where are they going, and then you said, oh, they're part of the Sabrimala vrat that they're keeping, and they're walking. So so that's something I wouldn't have asked if I didn't go to India and I didn't see that and happen in front of me.
And you will see very simple people who are not dressed in fancy clothes, very simple people, but you see they are so knowledgeable.
Yeah.
So that experience, you will not get it in America. Somebody is very simple, he looks like he's some ordinary person. But then when you talk for 5 minutes and you say, oh God, he knows so much. He even knows so much about America. They read the papers, they know so many things. Then those little things. So I know, for example, one kid who moved from America to India, and he was having problems with mathematics. So then when a tutor was kept for him, that tutor who came to teach him mathematics, he was not dressed in the typical pant shirt, the trousers and the Western way. He was wearing a dhoti, and he had a typical Brahmin appearance, with that juttu. And then this kid who went to live in India for a few years, he didn't want to learn maths from him, and he was showing his reluctance to his mother. So his mother told me all that. And then when he started teaching, then he was surprised. He told his mother later that I didn't expect him to teach so well or know so much about mathematics. So these kind of experiences.
The stereotypes are getting busted.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important.
Yeah. So that experiential thing is about those stereotypes getting busted and you'll be touched by little things that they do.
Yeah.
Right? You will see how they regard even the car as sacred, the car that you're driving. Here we just buy a car from the showroom, we start driving it. Over there you will see that they take the car to a temple, they get a puja performed on it. And then you realize that everything is sacred for them. Right?
Yeah, I remember in in one of my classes in school, I remember the teacher decided to give out papers by throwing it to all of us.
Oh.
I don't know, just felt like he wanted to do that, so he just threw it.
In America?
Yeah, America. Because it's not sacred for them, it's very easy it's okay if the paper touches the floor, you're throwing papers, you're throwing food, it's all okay. And that's not part of the Indian culture. Like if I know that I never got to see that in DPS, so I'm sure it's similar in India as well, because
yeah, we don't step on paper.
No, I'm just saying that I never got to see any teacher throw papers around like that in DPS, and so I know that DPS was kind of my introduction to what it's like in India. So that is a difference I would have seen.
Yeah, great. So these are the things that I'm so happy that you came to know all these things. It was important to me, so that upbringing was accordingly based on what is very important to me.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I would say that my experience, the reason why I feel so, I feel like Hinduism is just embedded in me. It's because of the experiences that I got from my visits to India, and from the stories that you've told me, and from the music, the different gamified ways in which you allowed Hinduism to seep into me. All of that made it part of my identity. And actually Hinduism was not something that was overtly forced on me or anything. It was the love of India. Hinduism flowed from that as well. So all of that came to me together. And it was interesting that I don't think I could have defined Hinduism growing up. If you asked me what Hinduism was, I could never have defined it, because I would have looked at what all I've experienced in life, which is festivals, how we celebrate our festivals, who are all our deities and our gods, the different temples. I would have just described all of those things because that was Hinduism to me. But in 9th grade, when I moved to the US, we were learning about world religions in our world geography class. And in that class was the first time I had like a white teacher explaining to a class full of different of kids from different cultures, and he's writing on the board, karma, dharma, reincarnation. This is what Hindus believe in. And then that was my first time I was explained in a classroom setting what Hinduism was. That, okay, this is what separates us from the other. So that means the other religions don't believe in these things. I knew what karma dharma was, but I would never have, it was my first time thinking it's the defining point of what Hinduism is. And I felt like it was just this clinical breakdown that he was giving on the board. But there's so much to me being Hindu. I don't know, I felt like I'm an insider to Hinduism. That's why this feels weird. Whereas
but
maybe
it's needed. That
it's
also
needed.
is good.
I know it's needed, but at that point when he was teaching all that, I felt like I'm an insider, and that's why I feel like Hinduism being broken down like this is strange. And it's maybe a good thing you never defined it to me until now, until my 9th grade class, because you made me experience it, and then all the definitions can come later in life. Whereas if you start with definitions, I wonder if you would still feel that identity, that connection to that identity.
But you also felt that Hinduism is very universal, right? Of everything that's part of Hinduism, the way we look at the world.
Yeah, there was no concept of an other, and so I was never made to feel that at all. And I think that's one of the reasons maybe I felt that this is now like clinically learning what differentiates us from the other. This was my first time learning that, because that was never introduced to me at all as part of my learning of Hinduism during my life.
Yeah, that's what is actually said about Hinduism, that we don't really have the other. We look at humanity as a whole, and we only see people in different stages of evolution as they are going on their spiritual path. And so some people might be very far away from spirituality, but in some birth they'll get there. That's the way we look at the world.
Exactly. This has been an exciting conversation. We covered a lot that I wanted to cover. And thank you so much for doing my second episode with me.
Thank you. I enjoyed it too.